I forgot that you were in a meeting because when I made a snarky comment, you didn't reply.
And that's how you knew?
And I was like, oh, she's definitely...
She's in a meeting, or she's dead, because she did not.
She's like, oh no, I hurt her feelings. Wait, that's not possible. She must be in a meeting.
She must be in a meeting.
It's got to be it.
I wasn't in a meeting.
Hey friends, welcome to the Equip Roundtable podcast. This is a special episode. This is episode 100 of the Equip Roundtable podcast. And what we do is we kind of just go down memory lane a little bit and talk about the episodes and things that we've done, who we are and why we talk about the things that we talk about. And so if you're new to the podcast, this really is a great overview of the podcast. And so we encourage you to not only listen to this one, but then go back and listen to some former seasons. You also learn a little bit about some of our inside language, some inside jokes. And so we just hope you enjoy hearing about the history of the Roundtable. Thanks.
I'm going to go to New York with Jared week after next.
So
he's got a big meeting in New York.
Okay.
And he kept asking
Like
me
in
to
the city,
go.
Manhattan?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kept asking me to go, and I kept saying I couldn't, and I was too busy. And then yesterday I was like, hey, you want to book me a plane ticket to meet you in New York? And he was like, done.
Good for you all. When's that?
September 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Oh, yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
Is it? I'm going to be, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
But
Have you
I'm
ever done
already
that?
like,
Okay.
not this time of year. I've
Yeah.
only ever done summer and then kind of holiday-ish.
Yeah, we've gone like around Thanksgiving.
We all love it.
And I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
We're going to,
Energy.
Yeah.
There's so much energy. I like it.
I'm going to go to the U.S. Open. I love tennis.
Oh, yeah. You're going to the U.S. Open? Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. So anyway.
I went in 2009 with 30 high school students, and it about ruined me.
I was about to say.
Because I went there for a whole week. We stayed at like some quote unquote Christian hostel in Brooklyn. And we would go into the city every day with Journey Church. Journey Church is Nelson Searcy and Carrick Thompson. Anyway, and we would go hand out candy bars, and it was all about kind of getting the word out on both Jesus and the church. And I literally saved like almost every kid's life. And I don't mean in like the Jesus salvation way.
Like in front of a cab. You
Like
pulled him out from under a cab.
Literally, they were walking into the street, and I had to pull them back because they were about to get rocked by
Wow,
a cab.
really?
Yeah. So ironically, though, we went back, and you know, cabs are less of a thing.
Right.
Like because of rideshare or Uber stuff.
Yeah.
And so we were there, and I was like, I missed the line of Elf where he's like, yellow ones don't stop. I like using that dad joke line, and couldn't realize much this time. But anyway, yeah, it'll be fun. Pizza. I will say this, holy moly. Because, you know, people say, oh, pizza's great, it's fantastic, whatever. You know, like, pizza's pizza. I got Jersey Giant at a Shell gas station here in Bee Cave, Texas. I'm fine. Seriously, that's what I thought. And then I went to New York, and then I was like, get the pizza. I ate one bite of this pizza.
It's the dough, man.
I was like blown away. The dough, but also the cheese.
And the sauce. I like the sauce.
Which makes the pizza. We just covered all
everything that...
Oh, it's the dough, man. And you said it's the
Cheese.
cheese. I was like, no, it's the sauce.
Yeah. And the box
And
that
there
comes
we
in.
go.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, and every bite, you know, the scene from What About Bob when Bill Murray's like talking about the corn. He's eating the corn and he goes, and whatever her name is this corn hand shucked? So Salem and I shared a moment where we both did that together. It was really cute. And it was
awesome.
like, is this pizza hand shucked?
That's really fun.
Anyway, it was
Also,
really good.
fun fact, that's the second What About Bob reference. Not from you. You're the second person to make a What
Interesting.
About
Today?
Bob reference to me.
Oh,
today.
okay.
Yeah.
What was the other one? 'Cause
Dave
I
was
gotta
the other
know.
one. Don't remember.
Okay, yeah, but
That was pre-lunch life. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Lorri really liked that. Hey, this is our 100th episode. There's that voice you say I guys get.
Hey.
I went ahead and did it. They can't. Oh, they can. We actually have a camera. We might use that hand gesture in the promotion of this episode. It's funny. We've been teasing. I think we started teasing the 100th episode prematurely. I think we did it like episode 77.
We thought it was coming sooner than it was.
Yeah, and it didn't. And, you know, we thought about having different guests on. We thought about all this kind of different things, and we decided that we weren't going to do any of that. And we are just going
Turns out
to...
you have to plan those things, and that just seemed like a lot of work, so we decided not to do that.
Exactly. 100th episode, we've just thought, a lot of people are finding us. It's been really cool over the last... We've been off for a while now. No new episodes over the summer. And we had probably about, I want to say this past month, what did I say to you guys? Over about 1,000, about 1,000 downloads. And that was a week or two ago. So I think, 1,500 new downloads. And so people are finding us, which is really cool over the summer. And so we thought this was a great opportunity for episode 100 to sort of just give a little brief history about what we've done, why we've done it, kind of who we are, and then what we're looking forward to about the future of this podcast. So anyway, that's what I think we will do today.
Do you remember our very first podcast that we officially did together?
Like not the one you guested on?
No, I think the one you guested on.
Not the guested one, but the one after you guys
So after the
roped
guested
me
one.
into this.
Yeah.
And Joey says, I listened to it last week.
Oh, did you?
Joey goes, so he turns and looks at me and says, so why are you here? And I was like, what?
Invited.
What do you mean, why am I here?
You're the one that got me on here.
Anyway.
That was pretty funny.
That was how you tried to introduce me.
That's a funny way to put that.
It was, in
Introduction,
fact. Thankfully, Jeff bailed you out, and he was like, well, let me tell you a little about Lorri.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
We didn't have to edit that part of the podcast. We just kind of kept it in. Yeah. So why don't we just share a little bit about kind of the genesis, Jeff, and I probably hand this over to you because you were part of the genesis conversation with our, creative department and kind of where it started and kind of where it's gone since.
Yeah. So Michael Summers, I think, talked to you, right? And Nathan Jennings talked to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right hand knew what the left hand was doing in their department.
Right.
Or if they were both having the same idea at the same time kind of deal.
Yeah.
Either one would check out pretty much around here. But I guess Michael talked to you about doing something that kind of behind the scenes for what we do as a church. So very, very niche as far as people that are at Austin Ridge, things that might make sense to them. Then Nathan kind of talked to me about the same thing with like a theological edge into it. So I was in seminary at the time. So he's like, it'd be cool for you to, all that stuff you talk to me about that I don't care about, it'd be good to do that on a mic, So I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk. And, I don't remember even how we got in the same room talking about it, other than probably Summers pulled us together. But the next thing I know, we're kind of just going for it and see what happens.
Were y'all friends then?
Well,
we worked together.
I mean, I knew you worked together,
I
but
can't remember, where did Equip come in all of this? Was Equip already happening?
Formative, I think.
I think we were doing events. We were doing Equip events.
That sounds right, yeah.
And then you
Which
also...
I was helping with a little of that.
You were, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what got us working like in tandem.
Yep.
For stuff was Equip stuff. So so I guess all that, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, all that was kind of happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Kind of parallel.
Yeah, and so I guess it was I don't know what we were calling it seasons back then, but we would have, all kinds of both volunteers on as well as staff people on. Yeah. So what we would do is we used to take a topic like, being a godly man and have a biblical, theological conversation about what it means to be a godly man. And then the very next episode, and they were the back-to-back days. So we would do two episodes in one. Yeah. And then we would record and say, okay, what about our men's ministry? And then we talk about men's ministry. And that was really interesting and very tiring.
Yeah. And we used to sit, obviously we have the camera going today. Yeah. And capture a thing, but we would record the entire episode. Yeah. And so because of that, we all had to sit on the same side of the table.
That's
Remember
right.
that? So we could get in the right shot. Yep. And it's funny to watch those back because it's like you're trying to kind of look at the camera, but look at the person. So you're talking this way and different things. And there was one I remember in particular. I had John Henderson on one side of me, and I think maybe Gary, and then TJ. So I got three very different statures of men sitting next to me. All strong men. TJ, if you're listening to this, manly men, macho men kind of thing.
Love Jesus.
But John Henderson is built different than
That's correct.
the rest of us, right?
He's a tall man.
It's like I was talking to TJ, and then I was like, I'm looking up at John, and talking to TJ, and looking up at John. But it was just funny just to go back and look at
the evolution of all of this.
How it started, how it's going kind of thing.
Three different sets, three different tables, over the years.
That's all Nathan Jennings, if anybody can remember him kind of popping in every once in a while. Cameos.
Yeah, for sure. And so one of those volunteers that came on was Lorri. And I remember the conversation being really good. And we were talking about moving from this video and niche kind of church staff, church stuff to like, hey, people are interested in conversations that we were having in our meetings or impromptu in the office about theological things and bringing it in front of people, an audience. And so when we were making that transition and moving more towards the podcast world, we were like, hey, let's who should we get?
They were like, Lorri has a face for podcasts. Now that we're not doing video anymore, let's ask her.
No comment. I was going to say, I don't know where to go from here. Okay, thanks. So then we asked Lorri to come on. Then that infamous line of, what are you doing here?
But you and I didn't know each other.
We really didn't, and actually that was kind of interesting because you mentioned this a couple episodes ago. How now we see each other all the time,
right?
The three of us, because you're on staff now. But before, we legitimately we didn't know each other, and then we really only got to know each other through this medium.
Yeah, so I had served with Lorri.
Jeff
worship
and I knew
ministry.
each other.
Yeah. And I obviously knew your teaching, and that may have been, I'm trying to remember even the impetus for me suggesting her even coming on. It had to have something to do with her teaching in women's ministry.
It was because I actually didn't know that about her because there was a little bit of hiatus from you doing that. And so I just thought you were someone from the worship team, which no offense to that. But I was like, what is she going to talk about at the round table?
What is she going to have to add?
Yeah. And then when I found out more about kind of your background and stuff, and then, Yeah. So then we went on, and we started. It was January together, the three of us in this format. We started January 2020.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Do you remember what the series was called?
Living as a Christ follower.
How to be a Christ follower in 2020.
Oh my goodness.
We thought we had a handle on that in January.
Yeah.
Well, we did for January.
I mean, for January we were fine.
Yeah, we were good. Yeah.
But by the time March, I mean, I'd forgotten that was the name of the series, and I went back and looked, and I was like,
cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had we started talking Institute stuff at that point?
I think it was right around the time that planning started.
I wonder if that's where she also came in. Because
Scope and Sequence.
Yeah, we were talking about Scope and Sequence.
Yeah, that's right, curriculum.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So, yes, we started doing that. And then I think through that, then March hit. I didn't mean to go necessarily chronologically with what we did, but I guess we could do that.
No, we don't have to.
Yeah, but it was interesting. I think that was an interesting time because we had just started and we were just getting on a roll, and then the world shut down. And we ended up doing this just like everybody else, adapting. We all got the snowball, is that what they call it?
The snowball mic.
Oh, yeah, the mic. Yeah.
And I went back and listened to a few episodes from when I was doing the podcast from my closet.
Hoping your kids didn't come in.
Yeah.
And I was recording it on Zoom and editing it.
That's right.
From my closet.
I know. It's crazy.
Literally,
yeah. And I got to be honest. So of course we adapted, and now it's a little bit. We all probably have some COVID talk fatigue.
Right.
However, it was really interesting because we called that series. Now that you brought that up, I remember how to live as a Christ follower in a pandemic or something like that. And it was really fascinating the kind of conversations we were having. There, and one of the most. I say famous episodes or episodes that stood out to me. Famous to me. Famous is the wrong word. I'm sorry. Is when we talked about the Sabbath, because it was early on, and it was one of the first times that we realized one of our things that we did well and that people responded to. Maybe that's why the word famous came. Is because we really disagreed.
Yeah, because you were wrong.
No, literally, you guys off the mic have admitted that I was maybe a little bit more right than wrong. That was a real. I'm wearing the headphones, and that came through really strong.
This is not how I recall this. We admitted that he was right.
No, to his credit, he just said that he wasn't as wrong.
Okay. I can go with that. You were less wrong than we thought, Joey.
Is that fair?
Yeah, but what's the irony of that now, Joey? What's the irony of that now? Now you think you were wrong.
No, I think I was right. I just was trying to plant that softly to you all. And so, which is really interesting. And we don't have time because this has not become an episode about the Sabbath, but maybe we should.
I think it is about you, Jeff. He's about to totally.
No, I think what we should do is we should probably.
Do some rehashes?
We should do some rehashes.
That'd be fun.
We call it Roundtable Remix.
Roundtable, okay.
I just came up with that.
I'm down with that.
Lori's trying to hold us together.
He's on fire today.
And we should go back and listen to a couple of those we started disagreeing with. Anyway, so we started disagreeing, and we realized, you know what? This is good. One of the reasons why we do this podcast is to talk about conversations, and we have done a lot of talking about theological triage of tier 1 issues, tier 2 issues, tier 3 issues, and helping model for people who listen how to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah. Well, it helps and models it for us. We're in process on so many things, and just to your point, if we did the Sabbath episode again tomorrow, even if we also held the same views, we might communicate them differently or posture them differently.
For sure.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's funny too. One of my favorite things about what we get to sit around and do is what Jeff says all the time, which is don't try to relieve the tension of these kinds of, not arguments, but just discussions, and that it is okay to not always agree.
Right.
But we don't have to act like we do. We just have to disagree well and respectfully and with, well thought out and well studied arguments.
Yeah, for sure. What are some other things you've picked up along the way, whether you personally, about what we do here on the Roundtable, or things you've heard from people who do listen? What kind of makes this podcast helpful, effective, or just some of our things that we talk about?
I think what I hear that people like is that we tend to take our biblical discussions seriously, but we don't take each other too seriously.
Right.
And I think that's helpful. I think it's helpful to understand that, yes, we can go hard at certain things that we truly do believe at a core level that impact us and impact others, but then 2 breaths later, we're laughing and enjoying just hanging out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's a core value, an unwritten core value of our church. Take God seriously, not ourselves too seriously. Yeah.
I think I'd say the exact same thing. I mean, that's what I hear from people. And it's funny, the people that may not like the podcast, they dislike it for that exact same reason.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you guys are talking over each other, you're arguing with each other, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you got to listen like an extra 30 seconds because the argument stops, somebody laughs, and then we're on to the next thing kind of thing. But it's just a conversation. This isn't overly scripted.
Yeah.
So we don't know what we're going to argue about.
Right.
That kind of keeps us all on our toes, I think, keeps listening.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's, personally, as a participant, that's my favorite part of doing the podcast, but that's what I hear from people listening as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people, whether it's on a jog or a workout or just, on a daily commute, I've heard people say it's like they wish we did it every day because it's like a morning show. I thought that was kind of funny because I think we realize that what we believe is not boring. It's not meant to be... it's exciting, it's engaging, and we get a chance to kind of open up the word and hash through it and fight through it. I think going back to a theme that you mentioned, Lorri, is like the tension of it and the weight of it, and hopefully the application of it. That people do walk and are spurred, on towards
and I think
work.
I think another thing we do we kind of found a niche in is just kind of looking at things where maybe what we believed or what we thought we knew was just a tiny bit off.
Yeah.
And the trajectory that sets up sometimes, if we're not careful, to let some of that sort of pseudo Christianese get into our thoughts and into our hearts. It can be dangerous. And so sometimes people have believed things, biblical things or sayings for a really long time, and they like to get the story straight a little bit.
What was our first one of that iteration? Like Coffee Cup Theology?
I think Coffee Cup.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Those are my favorites.
Really?
I think Coffee Cup Theology was my favorite season.
And so the premise behind that, and that really did launch us into kind of what every series is that little slight course correction of like, hey, you might have thought this, you might have learned this, you might say this today, but be cautious because there's another side to it. So with Coffee Cup Theology, the principle was, what it sounds like is that we see these certain verses on the side of coffee mugs, and we just say, okay, that whatever it means on the coffee cup is what it really
must
means.
Be true.
Yeah, it must be true. And we opened up those passages and actually looked at the context. And by the way, that's another thing we do a lot, and you say this a lot, Jeff, which is, we also hopefully model what it looks like to study the word. We talk about context. Lorri, you're kind of our, literary expert, subject matter expert, helping us with all things literary. So I think that's what's really cool too, is we all bring hopefully some practical ways in which we are learning and growing and studying and reading the Bible.
Yeah, it reminds me of the episode we did with my prof from Dallas.
Oh man, that's so funny.
Because that was the book that he and Dr. Spiegel just put out was
Primer.
The Primer for Theological Method. And it talks about the different people you want around the table to do theology with. And so, by extension, I think we kind of model some of that. Because like you just said, like she brings this, I bring that, you bring, and it's just...
He didn't finish that.
He's like, I bring...
I mean, I figured it was implied. You bring all the things that we don't bring, Joey.
Brilliant.
You are the wind beneath our wings. Let's be honest. But, I mean, that is the thing. I think a lot of times we get in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
We were in a Bible study with people that we all agree with. We're reading a book that we've all agreed upon, different things like that. And the three of us can come to this. And you got to understand, like, other than an outline, again, I just want to reinforce, we don't talk about what we're going to talk about.
Right.
Other than just planning in broad strokes. So when we get in here, it's truly I thought about it that way.
Right.
Like if we sound surprised, it's because we're legitimately surprised.
Yeah.
But I think that's how you do theology. That's how you learn and grow in your understanding of what God's Word teaches us over time, is doing it with other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes Joey will ask us questions that weren't on the outline, and it'll take us to a place where we have to think on our feet, and where we have to, sometimes I'll disagree with one of you initially, and then it'll be your turn to talk, and I'm like, oh no, I do agree with them. I just didn't know it until I heard their point of view. Because your gut instinct is not always as informed as you would want it to be. I was listening back to one about, does God want us to be happy? God just wants me to be happy. That was the phrase we were trying to correct. And Joey asked us, does God want us to be happy? And I cracked up because Joey was like, no, God does not. I was like, God does want us to be happy. Like you and I went back and forth on it. And then when I got to the end of the episode, I was like, oh, Joey might have been right on that one.
It's funny. That's the other thing too, is we talk about a lot of things. And Jeff, to your point earlier, like if we redid that episode, I'm in a different season of life. God has broadened my perspective on certain things. I might answer that a little differently or a little bit more nuanced or, and so I guess, not to like insert something like super serious or practical here, but, we've said this before about how we might believe something one day and believe something different another day. How do we reconcile that?
So important.
Yeah.
And it's that triage thing that we talk about, understanding what things are first tier. Like these are the things once for all delivered to the saints that have been believed by God's people for 2,000 years, right?
Yeah.
They're
and
in
there's
Scripture,
no compromise.
much clearer than the unclear things. In fact, they're the things that we interpret the unclear things from, right? And so then you get to the second tier things. Maybe they're not as clear, or there's multiple ways you can hold that view and still be within the realm of orthodoxy because it doesn't conflict or undermine something that is first tier.
Yeah.
And then third tier is like, you're really interested in that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not at all.
Right.
Talk about that. We're certainly not going to argue about it. I'm certainly not going to leave this church over that because of your view, that kind of stuff. So I think that's how you kind of rank those things out. But that's how we have to do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. And so what are some things that we've talked about that off the top of your head that you're like, oh yeah, maybe we should have talked about that differently, or I wasn't thinking about that, but now when you're giving me that look, I am thinking about that.
Is there a thing?
She doesn't want to say it, which is fine. But I think that
he's going to explain it beforehand, just in case. So please continue.
Well, no, I think there are things that, again, it's the theme that we just talked about, which is
you asked if we had regrets of anything that we had said.
Well, I was going to I softened it. I softened it for you.
Do you have regrets of anything you said?
Listen, I have a short-term memory about things I do wrong. I'm an Enneagram 3.
It wasn't wrong just one time yet.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, I love that statement so much.
Yeah, but that, and that's the thing is, as we hash this through, we do, I will say this, you don't have to answer that question. The weight that comes with teaching, James 3 talks about we shouldn't enter this lightly. And just so you, the audience, know, we do have fun and we do laugh, but we do take it seriously.
Yeah.
And, over the years, we've kind of joked about needing to, or maybe we wasn't so joking, we need to be careful about how much we say we don't prepare, because we want you to know we actually do. Our lives as Christ followers, as students of the Word, as pastors, as teachers in our respective environments, like there is preparing for an episode, but then there's just being a Christ follower, making sure that if there's something going out like a podcast, that we take it incredibly serious, and yet we don't always. We don't bat 1,000.
Well, I think it's different because I've thought about that when you said that before. We don't prepare for this the way we would prepare to teach somebody,
right?
Like we're preparing for a conversation, and I think we learned early on. I know, at least I'll speak for myself. Like when I over prepare and I have my 4-point outline of things I want to make sure I cover.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to cover that, and I tend to not listen as well.
Yeah.
And then we're not modeling a conversation anymore.
Yeah.
I'm modeling how I would teach it in a classroom or in a small group kind of thing.
Correct.
And that's kind of the vibe. I think a lot of times when we say that, it's kind of what we mean. It's like, man, I'm not ready to teach this right now. Well,
that's good.
Kind of wasn't the plan.
I appreciate that clarification.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, the episodes that are, in my mind, like the least effective or not helpful, there have been episodes where we press the record button off. And I'm like, oh yeah, we just came with our stuff today and didn't listen to each other.
Like I was listening to you talk so I could talk. That's the only reason I was waiting for you to finish so I could say something.
Yeah,
you know?
and I think that's an important lesson in life as well.
So good.
Right? Like when we come into a conversation, pretty sure that we're going to say what we're going to say, no matter what the other person says. That's not going to be productive and not good. So that's good for me to remember.
A couple things I want to clue into some people who are just now finding us, the last couple episodes of Joseph and maybe this 100th episode. If they go back and listen and they cherry pick episodes, there's going to be some things that are words we say or things that we do and talk about that might not make sense. So we mentioned the word mulligan a lot. So we've had a few mulligans where we've recorded an entire episode and we were like, that was so bad that cannot see the light of day.
Or there might have been one we thought we were recording. We weren't actually recording.
Oh, that's right.
Those are the best. Because they're like gold.
There was one or two that I was like, that was the best conversation we've ever had. And it
was
wasn't.
it that someone didn't turn the button on or we didn't have a disc
card?
in there?
Yeah.
Like that.
I don't know. Anyway, but there's been those. What are the things that we talk about or phrases or words that we say that it would really help people to know what we're talking about when we talk about it?
Early on, like I said, I went through the other day. I had to do a deep dive clean in my house, so I just put in some of the old ones and entertained myself while I was cleaning. We talked a lot about how Jeff was the community guy. Jeff would always bring.
There was a season where
everything back to community for an entire season.
That was pre-groups pastor too.
It was.
It was just like destined to be.
I'm pretty sure that's how I got in the
job.
It was pre-groups pastor. He talked about community all the time. Joey would always be real feeling-y and emotional about things.
He discovered his emotions in one season.
Did.
It was during pandemic. Well, what happened?
Well,
I started talking about it after the pandemic because I read like books on emotions and like, oh my goodness, I'm learning about it being an Enneagram 3.
Right.
And I've stuffed my emotions and I need to start feeling my emotions.
You
and
did.
So this became my therapy session.
So suddenly, so that cracked me up. I had kind of forgotten that we would jab each other about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Sure was something that has been we because we dialogue and we disagree and sometimes we don't buy everything each other are selling. The sure like okay, sure, that's where that comes from.
Well, when I honestly hadn't picked
caught up on
that.
Yeah.
Until you pointed it out, and it's like, oh wow, he really does do that. And then I've mentioned it to my daughter and son-in-law, and they're like, oh yeah, he did that in our premarital all the time. We would talk about that. It's like, okay, we can tell when Joey's ready to turn the page in that book.
Sure means move on.
So
you sure me on the way down to record today.
I did.
You
I sure did. Yeah. And so we have T-shirts that have sure in the back, and it was really funny because people who had not heard about the podcast were like, "What's this mean?" And I was like, "Explain that."
It means Joey's dismissing you.
Yeah. So we started this habit. There we go. Yeah. The new one. Yeah. Oh, I like it. We alternate, right? So if you go back and look at our history of episodes, we'll do topical. We'll go to a passage of scripture, and we kind of go back and forth, and we joke around about how we're so done with whatever we're on. So if we're doing a book of the Bible or we're doing a section of scripture, it's like, oh, okay, now let's go back to topic. And then we're like, why do we do topic? Let's go back to doing
I think one thing we realized too, because we noticed this when we did Joseph, and we kind of did a survey through his life, chapter by chapter. We also noticed it during Coffee Cup Theology, things we wish we knew, like all these here. At a certain point, we realize how we feel about that category.
Right.
Like there's certain things we just start hearing ourselves repeat. We kind of...
And sometimes that happens.
Sometimes Siri wants to show up and be the fourth guest of it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like we just kind of hit that. It's like I think we've kind of hit not the bottom, but I don't know even know the word I'm looking for, but
we just kind of we
just kind of exhausted our ideas for this.
How we perceive that. We figured out our personal lens for that particular subject matter, and we just keep seeing it through that lens by the time we get about 7 episodes in.
It is 7, and we always just eke out an 8th just because it's a round number or even number,
And because Joey had it on the calendar.
Like 10 or 12 planned almost every time.
Every time, even for this new series, which, by the way, let's go there. So before we go there, I would encourage you to go back, listen to episodes, go back to different series we've done. Coffee Cup Theology, Sacred Cows is another one that was a fun one. Setting the Story Straight.
That was a fun one.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, so we took not old, well, they are old, but Bible stories that you heard maybe in Sunday school growing up, and we just told you the real story of what really happened in those stories. And then Sermon on the Mount, or Summer on the Mount, as I like to say.
Yep.
And which I do. And then we did one on like deconstruction, culture, stuff like that. That was good.
That one wore us out.
It did.
I remember
it was hard.
It was heavy.
It was the timing of it too, because it was so heavy in that season of life of the world and things. And
that's something that, I mean, I don't know if a listener will ever pick up on that, but there's times like in the room, we feel the weight of what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Because I remember there were a few of those episodes that we were just tired after those.
So there are times where when we click the off button of recording and we laugh and we, whatever. And then it was like somber. It was like, and then that was the days when I used to have to like do the bumper, the intro too. And we stopped doing them because right around then, actually, probably, because I was like, that's difficult to do. So we are going to start a new series here for this fall. And it's funny, a lot of our series titles will come from things that we say or we talk about. And we are starting a series called I Don't Like That. And that is a phrase that we'll say to each other about all kinds of different random things. And I don't like that. And so it's really going to be about there are things that you have heard in the Bible. You may have heard it preached. You might have actually just read it straight from the scriptures. And at first glance, and when you first hear it, you're like, wait a second, I'm not sure if I like that. And so we're going to cover a myriad of topics. And so any thoughts about like certain topics or specific things or just what you want the listener to know about the series? I don't like that.
I think there's going to be some dissonance for people on this series when they listen to it, because so much of, I think, without getting too much in the weeds on this, I think I don't like that comes from intuition and not study. You know what I mean? So I think anytime we encounter something like that, like if we bring up something that gets a reaction out of somebody, it's going to create some dissonance and some angst and whatever, because we're maybe talking about something that really challenges something that is core, but not something that maybe has really been thought through. And that doesn't mean we've thought through it as much as we could have on everything that we're going to talk about this season. We might be still in process on how we think about it, how we articulate it, what we connect it to, that kind of thing. But I would anticipate some people going, I don't know. I don't know if I don't like about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's good.
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, because I remember like during recording some of those heavier, harder things where I had a moment where I thought, if I change, for lack of a better word, my stance on this and what I grew up believing about this, is it a slippery slope to everything I've ever believed falling apart?
That's right.
And I can remember having those thoughts in my head, like, oh gosh, what does this mean? What does it mean if something I believed all growing up is now not some... I have to admit that I heard that one way and I never studied it for myself. And so I think sometimes we have that moment when we come to the scriptures where we go, well, wait a minute. I don't like that. I don't, that's not how I remember things. That's not how, so there's some, I appreciate that. Sort of that tension that you were talking about where you're like, gosh, I don't like that because it changes things.
Yeah. And I would just encourage you as you go through it. We make this invitation a lot, and it's interesting because a lot of people do listen to the podcast, but seldom do people take us up on the offer to like write into us. And I would encourage you to do that, because there might be some things that you hear, and we're always willing to go back and open up a discussion or a conversation that we've had. That if there is that dissonance and that tension that you want us to kind of continue to dialogue about, we would love your questions. So equip@austinridge.org is where you can reach us, and we would absolutely love for you to write in to us. The other thing I would like to say is this: if you feel like this might be someone's cup of tea, they like learning in this format, we would encourage you to ask yourself, like, who might you could send this to? Old episodes you can go back and look at, and we try to make the titles of the episode like the topic that we discuss in the episode, and go back and listen and share. It'd be really helpful if you could like and subscribe to the podcast as well. So anyway, anything else? I don't know.
I think so. I'm just glad we get to keep doing this. Honestly, it's fun.
It is. We're in year 4, which means January 2024 will be in year 5 of doing it, which is really cool. And it's kind of crazy, but it is life-giving, for us personally, and hopefully it's encouraging to you all as well. And so join us this season. I Don't Like That, starting soon. Thanks.